Hello, YouTube. Uh, I, I, Hello, YouTube. On a recent upload, I talked a little bit about being an automotive mechanic. And in fact, a couple of my videos have been recorded in the shop itself. And I'd had someone in the comments ask me about how to find a good automotive mechanic. And I thought it might make a good topic for a video. Hopefully there will be some utility here for someone. Hopefully I can help someone out there. And so I thought a little bit about, well, what does make a good mechanic, and what would I look for if I were in the market? I haven't been in that position, but I do understand that it can be very difficult. So I've broken it down into three main things, three main characteristics that we want to pay attention to when looking for a good mechanic. And I'll list them sort of in order of importance. So the first would be price, and I would list that as sort of third. Rank of third. And price, it's something that can be actually difficult to assess because the shop rate may not necessarily tell you what the job price is going to be in the aggregate. And also, it may be something that if you have the means is worth sort of putting on the back burner a little bit, because by the time you deal with the other two items I'm going to mention, the higher price shops may actually net you fewer spent dollars in the end. So, but there are ways that we can assess price, and I will discuss those. The second thing that I would say, the second characteristic that you want to look for, certainly more important, I think, than price, is the attitude of the mechanic. Are they conscientious? Do they put themselves into their work? And there are definitely ways that we can assess that. And I would say that's very, very important. And of utmost importance, rank number one would be competence, because of course it's not going to matter too much if the guy is the most conscientious guy in the world. If he doesn't know what he's doing, it's not gonna give you the quality service that you're looking for. And so competence can be difficult to assess, especially for the layperson and for the consumer, but there are ways that you can assess the competence level of the mechanic or the shop that you're dealing with. So those are some things, the competence really, especially nowadays with the high-tech nature of our vehicles, even what used to be very simple systems such as brakes, which at one time were a simple mechanical and hydraulic system. Now we have anti-lock brakes, and we have active suspensions and traction controls which actually use the brakes as part of their functionality. The brake system itself is no longer a simple system, and there really aren't any simple systems on vehicles today. Most people don't realize that the average car has got 10 to 17 or 18 onboard computers. So competence is very, very important, and it's obviously going to increase in its importance over time. So I'll discuss a few ways that the consumer can assess the competence level of his mechanic within the rest of this video series. Thanks for watching. So since we've identified three important characteristics of a good mechanic, I think we'll just sort of deal with them each in order. So price is a little bit difficult, of course. It's going to depend on your region, and I do actually think it's the least important of the aspects to look into. But the one thing I did want to say on the subject is when it comes to shop rate or door rate, I think that's actually kind of the wrong thing to look at. I don't think it's actually all that important. So for instance, I have a certain shop rate, but I also have a lot of time that I don't bill out. So is my shop rate really what I advertise? Well, not in the end. I mean, I suppose if someone came to me new and I hadn't seen them before, I might charge, my straight door rate for the particular time I'd spent. But by and large, once someone's been to me more than once and I've established a relationship with them, I'm pretty generous with my time. And I think you're going to find a lot of the better shops are that way, especially when it comes to diagnosis. Mechanics actually cheat themselves out of a lot of time that could be applied when it comes to diagnosing things. So, I think you've got to look more at what is the final bill for the job. And of course, that's difficult to do unless you know someone who's been to that mechanic or you've actually gone to them and seen, been able to directly compare a water pump job at that shop versus a water pump job at another shop. And the same goes towards parts. Some shops will charge out their parts at their cost plus a certain percentage. And other shops will actually charge out their parts the same as the person could buy them at the parts store if they were to walk in off the street and buy them themselves. And that's what I do. I use what the parts stores call their counter price. So if someone walked into my supplier and bought the part, I will charge the same price as well. And some shops don't. Some shops mark it up. So sometimes, if you're concerned about price, it might not be a bad idea to come up with a job that you may be doing and need done, say a water pump or a timing belt or something, and call several shops and get estimates on it. And just see where they fall, and disregard the price per hour that they advertise, because I don't think that's actually all that important. So certainly a more critical factor in choosing an automotive mechanic is sort of how caring are they, or how conscientious are they, and that may be difficult to assess. Of course, I normally recommend asking around who's a good mechanic and finding out what the people that you know say, especially people that you already trust. And it's one thing if they say, well, I use this guy or that guy, or I go to this shop, but if someone starts ranting and raving about how awesome their mechanic is, and you trust that person, then that's a mechanic that deserves at least an initial visit and a little bit of business, so you can assess if they're as great as the person say they are. I think word of mouth still is great. I know there's things like Angie's List out there, and that may not work in every area, but certainly word of mouth and referrals from people that you know and trust are an excellent way to find a good mechanic. When it comes to being conscientious, I think there are a few things that go hand in hand with that. Does the mechanic save all the old parts and show you what was wrong and why they did what they did? I make sure that I justify everything that I do for my clients. I don't want to see their taillights with them feeling like I did something that didn't need to be done, or that I was somehow doing unnecessary repairs. So I will always save the old parts and show them to them, whether they understand what they're looking at or not. I've had young girls say, well, I don't know what I'm looking at here, and I'll say, well, you may not understand how this component functions in the vehicle, and then I'll point their attention to an area of obvious wear or something, and I'll say, but you can see that this probably isn't right. And I think it's important. I actually take a lot of pride in that. I have customers who've brought to me their young adult daughters, for instance, once they get their first car, and they'll start coming to me, and I kind of know that probably in a few years that girl's going to move away. And I take a great deal of pride in sort of helping establish for her level of expectation of an auto mechanic when she moves away to another area. And hopefully her standards will be high enough that she'll seek out a mechanic that's going to justify what he's doing for her and show her old parts, and also explain what he's done. A good mechanic, especially a conscientious one, can find a way to explain things in layman's terms that you might not understand otherwise without any kind of a technical knowledge, to make sure that you're happy and comfortable with the repairs that were done and why they were done. And I think that's really an important aspect of assessing the level of caring and conscientious attitude of the mechanic that you're looking at. When I actually came from a large big three dealership scenario before I started my own shop, and I have to honestly say that when I worked for the larger dealership, I didn't care as much as I do now running my own business. So I think independent garages can be better. That's not to say that there aren't conscientious mechanics in the larger dealerships. It's just that the environments sometimes are poisoned. Profit motives of the dealership, or possibly a confrontational union environment between the employees and the employer, and a lot of different things like that can cause the employment environment to be poisoned, and so the mechanics are going to be a little bit less conscientious. And keep in mind, of course, they're one step removed from you as a customer. We see a repair order and a car, but we never see the customer. And having been in business for myself now for going on 9 years, I can say I've developed a relationship with each and every one of my customers, and I care about them. So that's not just a truck anymore. That's Bob's truck, and I like Bob, and I want Bob to have trouble-free motoring, and I want Bob to come back, and I want Bob to bring his friends. So there's a lot more investment for me in that one water pump job or whatever it is than there would be otherwise. And so I think it's important to look at independent owner-operated repair garages, especially if the owner is the mechanic himself, because he's going to be the most invested in making sure that you're happy and making sure that he's doing everything he can to ensure that you don't just leave happy that your car's running, but that you are comfortable with the repairs that were done and you're comfortable they were done for the right reasons. And another way to tell if a garage is actually conscientious is, aside from saving the old parts and showing you, and aside from explaining things in layman's terms as to what was done, but also, do they just try to get all that they can on the first visit? Or do they triage it a little bit for you and say, well, listen, today I did fix this and this. Your car will need these things in the fall. And here's a couple of items I noticed. We'll just keep an eye on them. I've noted them on the repair order. We'll check them next year and just see. So I think that's a great service to do for your customers, because it actually prepares them for the things that need to be done in the future. But it also lets them know that you're not there to just get all you can while they're there. I mean, I've had customers call me of mine who are out of town. They've gone on holidays or something, and their fuel pump is, say, died. And they go to a repair shop, and the repair shop says $2,000. Well, $2,000 for what? Well, it turns out they're wanting to do the fuel pump and the spark plugs and a coolant flush and a this and a that and a whole bunch of other things. They're getting all they can because they know the person is from out of town, and so they're going to do whatever they can to get as many services as they can. And of course, if that person were to come to me, I would triage that for them, and I would say, you're going to need a coolant flush in the fall, and we should do your spark plugs, but depending on your budget, those can wait a little while, and these other services let's do next year. So I think that's a really good way to tell if your shop is conscientious, if they care about you, because ultimately that's what you're looking for.